Hello. So it's been quite a while since I've made a video. I think this is one of the longest hiatuses ever. And this one is going to bring in a number of different angles to COVID, because this has been such a dominant event of this year. I can't think of any event in any year that has dominated the year in such a way. I mean, even September the 11th, bear in mind that came towards the end of 2001, so we can't even say 9/11 dominated 2001 in the same way. Coronavirus, in that sense, has been probably the most profound event of my lifetime. Um, what I've noticed recently is a growing schism in this country between those who kind of endorse the idea that we need to continue to be cautious and continue to take this as the pandemic that it is, and those who are getting increasingly swayed towards the easing of restrictions. Now, there's a lot of grey areas here. That it's not a black and white thing, i.e., the two camps. There are people who are pushing reckless conspiracy theories. There are others who don't entirely endorse those theories, but they are at the point now where they're starting to say, well, what is the balancing act here? We're taking these restrictions to stop pressure on the NHS and to stop deaths. But is that worth the loss of liberty that we really are facing? Now, my own stance, I put a post about this on my Facebook timeline to counter what I feel is some of the reckless conspiracy theories. And by the way, if you find that offensive, I am not saying that every conspiracy theory is wrong about everything. But I do think some of the ones about COVID are very reckless. And I think if you're saying that this isn't real, not only is it reckless, but it's insulting to people who have lost loved ones and to medical personnel who have really, really experienced this I know they don't like the term, but on the front lines. You cannot tell me that 70,000 people die from seasonal flu. And it does annoy me when people just make that flippant statement, oh, well, the flu kills this people every year. It does. But even a bad flu year, you might get 20 or 30,000 dead. That would be a bad seasonal flu year. We've had 70,000 dead. I've also seen people, for example, taking the national death toll from all deaths in England and Wales, which averages around 520,000 a year. And they're saying, oh, look, 2020's only had 470,000 or whatever it is. Um, and they're using that as kind of evidence to say, well, COVID's not that bad. But consider this, around a quarter of a million people died in the Spanish flu from 1918 to 1920. Most of the deaths were 1918 in this country. At the time, Britain had a population of roughly 45 million. Most people at that time didn't die from it. Probably many of those, I don't know what the percentage was, probably many of those who got Spanish flu didn't die from it. But that doesn't mean it wasn't a real pandemic. Doesn't mean it wasn't an extraordinarily lethal pandemic, because it was far worse than this one in terms of overall mortality. However, this is the deadliest event since then. I mean, we've now surpassed the toll of World War II civilian casualties in this country. So I don't. I get quite annoyed when people try to trivialize and downplay it being a pandemic. It's a pandemic. People need to accept that. However, I also um, I also am getting more sympathetic to the other side of the argument, which is that continued restrictions may end up doing a lot more harm than the virus itself. The virus will kill people. Make no mistake about that. And I have profound sympathy for those who lose loved ones. But if we have a continued economic crisis, there's going to be other deaths from suicides linked to depression. Um, there's also been an argument that other illnesses have been sidelined because of COVID. I think mental health has been massively sidetracked, and with all due respect to the scientists and medical personnel pushing for another lockdown, they really need to say something about that. Mental health is in their field as well, so I really think if they are pushing for another lockdown, a third national lockdown, they really need to address that issue because it's a serious issue. There's also obvious discrepancies here. I mean, the whole of Scotland's been put into tier four. Now, the situation in Glasgow is going to be different, say the Shetlands or Dumfries and Galloway. So this one size fits all approach is understandably going to be very controversial, and it's going to be very, very hard on small businesses. I'm not a COVID skeptic, and I don't treat this like the flu, but I do think we're at the point now, particularly as the vaccines are coming in, the government really, really needs to look at a way of normalizing the situation, even if the virus is still around. Um, because I think that if there is a third national lockdown, I think there could be anarchy. I mean, this is becoming as divisive an issue as Brexit in this country. People are getting into heated rows over what it means and so on. I'm not a COVID skeptic, but I am also very sympathetic to the plight of small businesses who are basically, I mean, if you're running a small shop with, say, three employees, you're being kept on a yo-yo. It's very difficult, very difficult. And I really do think at this point, the government needs to be focusing on a way out. My gut feeling is a third national lockdown would be wrong, even if there are still a lot of cases. Why? Because I think it will push people over the edge. I think most British people have been very compliant. They've worn masks, kept social distances, they've done everything they've been asked to do for the most part. Yes, there's been some reckless people, and those idiots going around saying COVID's fake. If you're angry about the Christmas restrictions, blame them more than the government. However, the government does have the power to also consider what are the priorities, and I do sway now to significantly relaxing things. Not completely, but we have to get back to some sense of normality because we have sacrificed liberty. And I'm starting to wonder, is it worth it? That's my gut feeling. Um, I mean, to be clear here, I'm not saying that tomorrow everything should go back to normal. I think it should be a gradual easing off. But I do think that should be the focus now. Um, because it's a profoundly difficult time for a lot of people. This is this really has had a big blow on this country and around the world, particularly in other parts of Europe. South America's been hard hit. This is real. This thing is real. Um, People say things like, "Oh, it's mostly old people have died." That's true, but there have been young people have died. I remember a case early in the pandemic, a young guy in London. His family couldn't go to his funeral. I think he was 13 years old. So you cannot tell me that's just like the seasonal flu. Um, and I would also urge anyone watching this be very, very careful what you read online. If you get people, Tracy or Dave, who have read online that the vaccines are going to be implanted with microchips or whatever it is, if you're taking their word as gospel rather than listening to scientists and virologists, one of my contacts mentioned, oh, well, you're suggesting they're all the same. No, I'm not saying that. There will be disagreements among them, but I still give them more weight to, people who have no qualifications whatsoever pushing reckless ideas. It's not only reckless, it's also insulting to people who have lost loved ones. But I do think 2021 we need to be looking at a window of normality, even if there are still COVID cases around. And I'll just round this up. Yeah, I will be making a video soon. I don't know when exactly, but about just this channel and about where I want to go with it and so on. So I'll just leave it there. I hope everyone's well. I hope you've all had a good Christmas, if you celebrate Christmas. And I'll probably make a video before the new year, but Thanks for watching, and that's my thoughts. Let me know your take on this. I wouldn't say I'm totally in the middle. I'm now slightly swaying more towards the easing of restrictions. People are fed up with it. I'm fed up with it. My big concern, actually, certainly small businesses, but I'm quite concerned about the future of cinema. I love the cinema, and if the big screen is replaced by the likes of Netflix because of this, it would be an utter tragedy. I mean, Sunderland only has one cinema, so if that were to close permanently, it would be an utter tragedy. Right. Take care, everyone. Let me know your thoughts.